Hello, good morning. Another Monday in isolation. Our Prime Minister announced last night that really our situation hasn't changed, but from Wednesday we are allowed to go outdoors for exercise for more than 1 hour, and I can't tell you how happy we are about that. Not to socialise, but to get exercise whilst social distancing. An hour for me is not long enough of a walk, and with the amount of eating I've been doing, I certainly need more than 1 hour to burn off the calories I have been consuming. This last week we ran out of biscuits. Now, biscuits in the UK are cookies in the US, and we don't normally have biscuits in our house, but when there was lots of food shortages, biscuits were something that were available. Anyway, the last packet is gone, no more will be bought, so my diet has now officially started, and I was very pleased that when I got on the weighing scales today to see that I've lost 2 pounds. So it's going in the right direction, but there's a lot of 2 pounds to lose for me to get back to what I was pre-lockdown weight. Anyway, what have I got to talk about today? Well, I've actually got quite a bit to talk about. Last week I showed you the most beautiful Irish sampler, and it's a very unusual sampler. I've been very, very busy working on that sampler. It's been consuming me, and when one of these little girls gets me, I can't think of anything else, and I work very, very long hours on charting them. I get into them, and then I can't seem to resurface back into the 21st century. So I tend to work through the night and what have you, and that leaves me very, very stiff when I do get up from my desk. I'm like this, and my hands is stuck in that position from operating the mouse, clicking all the stitches onto the screen. Anyway, I thought I would show you the colours that I've chosen for Hannah Campbell, the sampler from Ballypalladie in Ireland, and those colours are really, really beautiful. She's going to be stitched on lakeside linen vintage sand dune, so that's a little bit of a hint for those of you who want to stitch the Irish sampler. Lakeside's not easy to get hold of, but it was the linen that we thought really complemented the original sampler. So those colours are delicious. I love this run with the corals, the salmons, the reds, the pinks, and going down into the mauve, and those are perfect matches to the original sampler. That was great fun picking those colours. Okay, so that's an Irish sampler. So let's look at a Scottish sampler. Let me put these out of the way. This sampler is Scottish through and through, and the reason that we know it's Scottish, or one of the reasons and the main reasons that just jump out at you, is this row of alphabets: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. And that is so typically Scottish. This sampler was stitched by Margaret, and I'm not quite sure how to pronounce her surname, I must ask Ray. Skier, S for Stephen, K for Kilo, E for Echo, A for Apple. Next time I talk about her, I'll make a point of getting my husband to let me know how I should be pronouncing her. And she stitched her sampler, or she finished her sampler in, let me put my glasses on, because this linen on here is extremely fine, in 1820. And it's beautiful. One of the things that I really, really loved about this sampler is the border. Really, really pretty. Now, the glass on this sampler is really, really dirty, and the frame is very, very dirty. This has been somewhere where it's been close to an open fire or a very sort of polluted area, because it's when you handle it, it is really dirty. And I'm looking forward to opening this girl up and actually seeing her colours, and I think that when I take her off her backing board, those colours are really, really going to pop. Scottish samplers, they are colourful samplers. Now, talking of Scottish samplers, Jane Fiddis, we're having great fun with that stitch along, and one of the questions that have been asked in the stitch along was about the alphabet, the Scottish alphabet. This alphabet that runs along here, and one of the ladies thought that she would like to personalise her sampler with initials that meant something to her and her family, and I think that is a fabulous idea. Jane Fiddis and all her school friends that were in her class, in the lead up to stitching their sampler, and we're in the lead up to starting Jane on July the 4th, those little girls would be busy now planning their sampler, because Jane's sampler with her initials are not the same as her needlework teacher's sampler, and this would have been different to her classmate's sampler. She was working out the placement of her family's initials right throughout this sampler. So you've got initials in this row, this row, this row, and then scattered around the sampler. So her class project set by her school teacher would be to design her family initials and work out the placement in her sampler. And Jane couldn't fit all her initials in this row that she wanted to stitch, and her initials, she squidged them together, they're very close in places, and she burst out of the border here. So let's have a look at these in a little more detail. So here we go. These initials, they're all outlined in back stitch or double running stitch with little curlicues coming off them. And she didn't have much space between them. Let me put my glasses down. Oops. They're very close together. So, for those of you stitching Jane, or even if you're not stitching Jane, but you would like a little bit of a fun project, why don't you sit down with some graph paper, and you can get graph paper off the Hands Across the Sea Samplers website. If you go into Sewing Tools and Basket, in the drop-down menu you will see graph paper and you'll be able to print it off. Why don't you try designing your initials? Even if you're not stitching Jane, you might like just to stitch them out on a pin cushion or some sort of small piece of needlework. And why don't you post your pattern for other people to see? Not everybody can sit down and design a little something, and if you can do it, share your initials, come along, join the Jane Fiddis Stitch Along on Facebook, or post it on your Instagram page and tag Hands Across the Sea Samplers, or even email it to Hands Across the Sea Samplers, and we can post it so that others can see. It would be really, really nice if between us all we could get all the letters of the alphabet charted. Now, in Jane's sampler, the space that she had to fit these in is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 15, 25, 26 7. You've got 27 rows for the height of the letter. Let me just double check. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, hold on. Oh, sorry, it's Monday. Ideally, you want them to fit in, 26 rows. And the alphabet itself is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So the letter is 20, but you have 26 to add these little curlicues around. And you can get quite creative with these curlicues. This was how Jane did hers, but when you look at how Margaret did hers, Margaret's, in fact it probably doesn't show, oh it might in this light, can you see she had a lot of curlicues and they really curled much more than Jane's. It would be great fun to see if we can get all the letters of the alphabet charted and shared, and then if you're going to stitch Jane, why don't you personalise your sampler so this sampler will mean something to you and the generations of your family to come. And we're still stitching this sampler in the spirit that this sampler was originally stitched in. Jane didn't put her needlework teacher's initials on her sampler, she personalised it. And that's part of her lesson in stitching the sampler. Samplers were not just about learning how to sew. Samplers taught literacy and many other subjects. So anyway, that's my little bit about Jane. And I thought I would show you another Scottish sampler where you can see this lettering and with the curlicues that Scottish samplers are so well known for. Now, as we've got a book out, I will share a question that I've had come in via email. I wonder if you could recommend any books about samplers and their history. I love your information in patterns and would love to read more about samplers, especially British ones. Okay. So, she goes on to say, I've read several Bristol samplers and George Mueller. Do you have any suggestions? Well, one suggestion is to Claudia Dutcher-Kitzler of Dutch Treat Designs. With her wonderful knowledge and her private collection of Bristol samplers, I think Claudia ought to write a book, and I, for one, will order several copies. Anyway, let's have a look at some of my favourite books. And this question came in a couple of days ago and I've been thinking about it, and the trouble is my favourite books, most of them are out of print, and I feel a little bit it's unfair of me to recommend books that you can't readily go and buy. And then I thought, well, how can I say something's my favourite book just because it's in print, when really my favourite books are out of print? So I thought I'm going to tell you what my favourite books are. Now, when I first started needlework and I wanted to expand my knowledge of samplers, a lot of the books that were the books to go to were out of print. Needlework books, because it's a limited market, don't get printed in huge numbers and they don't keep on having reprints. So when I started, there were books that I wanted that were out of print, and I had to scour second-hand sites, go to second-hand bookstores. But eventually I did build up my library to include most of the books that I wanted. So even though the books I'm going to show you just can't go onto Amazon and click and order them, you know, over time, if you're interested, you might be able to build up your collection as well. And one of the lessons that I learned from that is that if there is a new reference book published, I always buy more than one copy. and I have a copy for my study. I have a copy for my bedroom, because if I'm upstairs, I don't necessarily want to run downstairs to get a book, and I'm terrible. Before I go to sleep, I tend to flick through reference books, land on a sampler, read about it, refresh my memory about it, and I like to have a book where it's handy, so I near enough always buy 2 copies of a good book. So that's just my little tip. So this isn't my all-time favourite, but this is in my top 5, and that was the book I just opened for the Scottish Sampler. And this book is Remember Now Thy Creator by Naomi Tarrant, and this book is a fabulous, fabulous book. It's how many pages? 200 plus pages, and it is full of the most fabulous samplers, but it's full of a lot of valuable information and research that Naomi has done over many years. A really, really fabulous book. On the inside front cover there is this sampler, and there are more than one of this type of sampler. There's a few of them that I've seen over the years, but I've never been in the right place at the right time with my piggy bank full of savings to be able to buy one. And I would dearly love to add that type of sampler to my collection. So I believe that this book is now out of print, but second-hand copies come up all the time. So that's a really good book, good reference book. Okay, now a book that is in print, and you can purchase this book from the Fitzwilliam Museum's online store. Now that is closed because the UK is still in lockdown and museums aren't going to open for a very long time. They said last night on the news that probably attractions, which a museum is, it will be July at the earliest, and July is not a confirmed date. But you know, this is available to buy once the world gets back to normal. And Sampled Lives by Carol Humphreys is again a fabulous book, packed full of wonderful photographs and lots of information. It's 200 odd pages again, and it's described as showcasing over 100 samplers from the Fitzwilliam Museum's remarkable collection, and it is a remarkable collection. Sampled Lives shows the importance of samplers as documentary evidence of past lives, and that is so true. These beautifully embroidered and stitched samplers illuminate the lives of girls and women, from the mid-17th century English Quakers to the early 20th century school pupils, encompassing their education, employment, religion, family, social status and needlework skills. It also highlights the individuality of each sampler, which in some cases is the only surviving document to record the existence of an ordinary young woman. Now when you read that, how could you not want to dive in to this book? That sums up everything that samplers are to me. And it is a lovely book, very well written, and I've got so much respect for Carol Humphreys and her amazing knowledge. That would be my dream job, to work as a curator in the needlework section of somewhere like the Fitzwilliam or the Victorian Albert Museum. I would be like a little girl in a candy store. So that's a book you can get, and it's not expensive. I think, in my mind, it's about £20. Now, my absolute all-time favourite books are the Fella Collection. Fella Collection 1 and Fella Collection 2. Both out of print. This book, well, both these books, I've seen them go for over £1,000, which is ridiculous. But I didn't pay that for them. I was lucky enough to get these whilst they were available. The Feller Collection 1 was the first one, and Feller Collection 2 was the second one, obviously. But it's the second one I really, really, really love. I've been fortunate enough to see this sampler on the front cover a few times, and it is mouth-wateringly beautiful. It really, really is. This book is just fabulous. It is the ultimate book on samplers. And if you're lucky enough to see the Feller collection, you will get to see all these samplers, except for the ones that they gifted to the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. The Fellers, Michael and Elizabeth, they are so incredibly generous with sharing their samplers and their knowledge, and they gave, I'm not sure exactly how many, it might have been 100 samplers or 100 pieces of needlework to the Ashmolean Museum, or thereabouts, that number. So those books, if you can get them, are well worth adding to your library. A book that I missed out on when it was first published, again by Carol Humphreys, is the Quaker Schoolgirl Samplers from Ackworth. And I just didn't get this when it came out, and I regretted it because I ended up paying a lot of money for this book and trying to track it down. Again, it is full of lots of information about the samplers from Ackworth. It's an interesting book if you have an interest in Ackworth samplers. I do have two samplers, very unusual samplers from Ackworth that are actually map samplers stitched by two sisters, and I really, really ought to show those. There is almost identical samplers in this book somewhere, and I will show them. I'll make a point of featuring those samplers in one of these little pop-up videos. So that's an interesting book as well. Another beautiful book, and I am sorry this is out of print, but before this went out of print I did find a source of these and let everybody know, and this is a beautiful book. I love Norfolk samplers. They are one of my favourite genres of samplers, and I'm very pleased to say that we actually have a stunning Norfolk sampler that's almost finished and will be released this year, and it's not quite so traditional as the one on the front cover, but I am actually in the process of charting one of these samplers that just screams to you Norfolk, but I'm not going to show you which one yet. It's a surprise. This book is just full of the most glorious samplers, and it's imitation and improvement, the Norfolk sampler tradition, and you do get a pattern with this book as well, and they will start coming up second hand on Amazon and eBay and places like that. I think that Norfolk samplers are so beautiful. Fabulous embroidery skills and great use of colour, beautiful borders, really, really lovely. So that's a good one if you can grab it. Samplers from the Victoria and Albert Museum. This is a good book, and this is a book you can pick up second-hand very easily on the internet. I'm not sure if this one's out of print. I really should have looked before I came online. But this one you'll be able to pick up reasonably, I would imagine. But what you can do, as you can do with so many other museums, such as the Fitzwilliam and the Victoria and Albert Museum, if you haven't got access to the books, you can go onto their museum websites, and they have many of their samplers online, so that you can view them and learn about them as well. So that's another source for you. Okay, so those are my favourite sort of reference books, but there are another form of reference books, and those are Whitney Antiques exhibition catalogues. These are fabulous references as well. Now, again, these aren't printed in huge runs. You can go onto Whitney Antiques website, or you can go onto Amazon and you can order the ones that are current. And on Amazon, you will actually be able to pick up second-hand ones as well for the ones that are out of print. And basically, when Whitney have an exhibition, they publish a exhibition catalogue. And I really, again, didn't think about this very carefully. I should have picked up the latest one to show you. But again, these are packed full of beautiful, beautiful samplers, and they tell you a little bit about them as well. I just spotted, as I was flicking, some Scottish initials, which is what we started this video with. See these with the little curlicues? Scottish samplers, they're so rich, very richly designed. Oh, I can tell you what I'm going to be doing today. When I should be working, I'm going to be going through books looking at samplers. So there are numerous Whitney catalogues. If you do a search on Amazon, if you put in Whitney Antiques, they'll start coming up, and they're written by Joy Jarrett and her daughter Rebecca Scott, and the quality of the photographs are, you know, fabulous photographs. If you remember, this is a sampler in my collection that we looked at the other day. Just beautiful books. Look at that. Isn't that magnificent? Could you imagine the thrill that you would feel when you put the last stitch in a piece of work like that, and the pride you would have had hanging that on the wall of your home? But you don't get to embroider something like that when you're just starting. That's years of practice to get to that skill level. But then we've got years that we can practice. Needlework is a journey. We all start off and we work our way through and upwards, onwards and upwards, and the journey and the distance we get is dependent on how much effort we put into that journey. Okay, let's have a little look at some questions that I have been asked this week. So that was the book one. I'm working on the little gem Mary Steed in Legacy Linen 36 count with Dalgety silk threads. First time linen and silk, and I love it. I'm using a 7-inch round hardwork banner hoop. My question is, will moving the hoop around the project damage the stitches I have completed on the linen? I have wrapped my bottom hoop with the cotton twill tape. Well, no, it won't, but you mustn't leave your hoop on your needlework permanently. You put your hoop onto your work when you're working, and the moment you stop, you pop your hoop off. It's all about, if you leave any sort of weight or pressure on an object, after time it will leave an indent. So it's all about not leaving your hoop on your work. Always pop the hoop off when you put your work down. Well, I know it's past your bedtime, but I'm in America and have just watched your video, and I am in love with Dutch Beauty. What a beautiful sampler she is. Now, that is the sampler I showed in my last video that I spilt tea over. May I ask your suggestion on choosing my linen? Was looking at Zweigart in cream. I think cream would be beautiful for Dutch Beauty, but everybody sees things differently. I've seen Dutch Beauty over the years stitched on many different fabrics, and they all look beautiful. But I stitched mine on cream, so and it wasn't that I chose it, that's what came with it. I nearly died when I saw that linen when I first opened it. That was my first project on linen after stitching on Ada. So anyway, to the lady who asked the question, yes, I think Dutch Beauty will look beautiful on Zweigart cream. Right, this is quite an in-depth email, and there's some personal stuff, so let me just skip past it. I'm interested in stitching the little gem, the checkerboard house. I read that it can be stitched on linen and Ada, which is correct. My question, do you think about stitching the chart on 25 count Lugana? I thought perhaps I could try that versus 16 count Ada. I love the look of the linen that so many stitchers use. However, I've not taken a class and don't feel I could see the fabric well enough. Right, that's a really good question actually, and my response was Lugana is a lovely fabric to work on and will be a good choice. But when you first switch from Ada to linen, it can be moving out of your comfort zone. But remember, you can do this. The first few stitches will be the hardest. Take your time and place the first stitch carefully. The more stitches you lay, the easier you will see the holes, and your needle will just start finding those holes automatically. I promise you, the first time I opened that piece of linen out of the Dutch Beauty kit, honestly, I could have died. I thought, I can't see, I really can't see. And then I thought, no, Nicola, put your big girl pants on and you're going to do this. And I must admit I got a magnifier, and I found a hole and I very carefully counted it, put that in, then my second one, then I did a row of cross stitches, and as I was working my way through those row of cross stitches, those holes became more easy to see. And then after a while, you don't even have to go 1, 2, 3. You just, your needle will find it. And again, if you're prepared to try, it's amazing what you can achieve. Lugana is a really good choice from stepping up from Ada because the holes are, it's a really nice weave. So yes, please try, and let me know how you get on if you're brave enough to try linen. Oh, I did also say to this lady, so the more stitches you lay, the easier you will see the holes that your needle will use. Before you know it, you will have made the transition from Ada to linen and will be stitching away. Every skill in life comes with practice, and it's true. Oh, this is a great one. Hello from Texas. First, I want to thank you for your many reproduction samplers. I'm a very long time stitcher and have done samplers as well as needlepoint for many years. My question to you is, have you ever reproduced any American samplers? I would love to reproduce an American sampler. It's just I've never been lucky enough to acquire an American sampler. I have bought samplers from America, but they've either been Scottish or English samplers that I've been bringing back. One day, the right American sampler will come up and will find its way to me, and I will reproduce it. America has beautiful samplers, and that's a whole new field for me to explore and learn about. And when I do get an American sampler and I research it and expand my knowledge, I will very gladly share that with you. But that's something for the future. Okay, this is quite a long one and it's quite a personal one. But what I loved about this lady is that she has found a way to work through adversity. The lady's not very well. She has a long-term illness, but she can find time to stitch. And she can't go to bed without stitching even 10 stitches, and I think that's great. Even in a busy life, I have a friend who has lots of children, and she doesn't get any time to stitch as such, but she always puts one thread on her needle and gets that thread in, and you'd be surprised at the samplers that she does complete by doing that. This lady's question was about linen. She really loves Zweigart linen and Zweigart linen base. It is my favourite linen to work on, the Weeks Stylock linen and the Lakeside linen, they all use a Zweigart base. Although I say Zweigart is my favourite linen, I must admit that in the last sort of year, 18 months, I've discovered Legacy linen and Legacy linen. Their linens are wonderful. So either a Legacy linen or a Zweigart base linen are my favourites now. This lady goes on to say that she likes the colours in the Zweigart range and the feeling of the fabric, and I like the feeling of the fabric. The weave is nice, it's a nice weight, it feels nice in the hand. The lady wanted to stitch Eliza Bell Cox, and she purchased some linen from Permin, but she dislikes the linen in her hand, and Permin linen, it is a stiff linen, and she was asking about giving it a bath in cool water to remove the finishing, and she says she knows the fabric will shrink, I know that we bought some linen for a model and it wasn't Zweigart based, and when it came it was very, very stiff, and the model stitcher did rinse it and it did tighten up, it shrank, and that became quite uncomfortable to work on with the chosen thickness of silk. So I personally have never washed any linen. If I have linen that's very stiff, I find that handling the linen will soften it up. I'm a little bit of a wuss. I'm always nervous about washing anything other than when I tip tea over it. So I'm not somebody to ask about washing linen or pressing linen. But I have found with stiff linen, just handling it will soften the linen up to stitch on. But yeah, I don't like stitching on very stiff linen either, so I understand where this lady is coming from. Anyway, that rounds up my pop-up video for today. I'm going to go now and be a domestic goddess and cook Bertie and Ray their lunch. Bertie has got one of his favourite foods today, and I don't eat meat. I'll tell you something now. This turns my stomach. Bertie's favourite food is tongue, and cooking a tongue is not nice, but the things we do for the people that we love, I wouldn't cook one of those for Ray, but I'll do it for Bertie. After I have completed my domestic goddess duties, I am going to settle down with a sampler from the 1800s, and I'm going to go back in time, I'm going to lose myself, and I'm going to chart away. The next video I do is going to be a little gem being released, and I'm so excited because this is not a reproduction, it's an original design, and it's a bit like Christmas. Friday's taking a long time to come. I want to share her with you today. I'm so tempted to pop up tomorrow with the release, but I'm going to be good. I'm going to try and hold out till Friday. So until the next video, stay safe, stay well, and bye-bye.